Hello everyone and welcome back to the AVA live stream. Today we have a special guest, a longtime friend of mine for years now, and I've been a member of his forum for most of that time. Wendell, why don't you introduce yourself? Absolutely. So, tech news is kind of all over the place this week.
I mean, a lot has happened though. Like,
yeah.
Things that would normally headline for an entire week, it's just all been crammed into 5 days. So
yeah. So to boot things off, Tom's Hardware had a bit of a meltdown. So I'll lay the stage. There was an article posted about the RTX cards. Relatively normal article. Like, here's why you should wait and why you shouldn't pre-order. Pretty normal. Then Avram, who was one of their head editors, I believe, posted what he claimed was a counter article that was, he acted like it was planned for on his Twitter, but that's not how it was received. He basically said why you should buy the RTX cards now. And that grabbed a ton of attention, and well, it's becoming found out that that was not at all planned, and a lot of the authors at Tom's are not feeling too happy about this.
really,
No. Yeah. Apparently there was a fight over locking or hiding and unhiding comments on their forums, putting Avram on blast, and just a whole ton of drama.
wow.
No, he's coming up. He's really quiet.
Yeah, Avram just recently came on. I guess he was with another company until recently.
You pressed something before we went live. He's coming up. He's really quiet.
I didn't touch you. Louder?
I heard about that. Yeah. I would like to know more of that story too. Yeah, it's definitely been craziness so far with the RTX cards. It seems like nobody can say anything without everything catching on fire.
No. Right.
Not gonna rush.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah, I don't quite understand the direction they're taking with it either. They definitely. I think so. Maybe he had a friend. Maybe money was involved. I'm thinking more so it was just a friend. But yeah, it seems like everybody's all over the place. Everybody's either like extremely for or extremely against, and it's not really seeing the middle ground much with these RTX cards, and it's ridiculous because we don't even have real performance metrics yet.
That's what we're working on now. Yeah, it works. No, and it's showing your audio levels in the mixer too.
like we're seeing it in the Discord, but for some reason it's not catching your audio in the stream. So this is good stuff.
Computers will do what computers do.
We can just
We're gonna have to start sign languaging.
A speech to text translator.
Let's see. You want to move us on to our next topic, Joe?
Sure. So next topic we have here is that AMD's chip manufacturer has decided to take a seat. According to the reports, it appears that they just doesn't make monetary sense for them to even consider, not to mention the lack of competition at that, to even consider the 7-nanometer process in manufacturing. So what are your thoughts on that, Zack and Wendell? Right. Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's not. Yeah.
A little bit.
That's not very good. So I do think that the fact that they've had to change chip manufacturers for 7 nanometers is a sign that it's becoming increasingly difficult with silicon. Which, I mean, you don't need a crystal ball to figure that one out.
No. I mean, not to mention, you're also going to have issues with the fact that and Intel has had issues with it, and so it's obviously a challenge. It can be challenge-based for one thing. Based on what I read, what I got out of the biggest message in reports was that there just isn't enough competition out there for them to really push for 7-nanometer processes anyway, to really give them the drive to take on that project. Right, I agree. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, convert the R&D labs into production. Convert the low yield things into production. Let's just print money, guys.
Yeah.
And so I think that also means that the TSMC should look at this and their investors and stuff, and they should say, oh, we could charge a boatload of money for this. And so maybe that means, like, we've got Vega Instinct on the enterprise. Those people are willing to pay, $5,000 for a video card for machine learning and VDI and stuff like that. And so it might mean that we enter a world where these new processes are available only on super expensive server products for the first couple of generations, which is a little bit of a reversal. I mean, the gamers don't realize it, but a lot of the time the gamers are sort of beta testing the products before they go into the enterprise. I mean, on the Intel side, if you just look at CPU clock speed, some people can say that Intel is being stingy with CPU clock speed, but no, Intel needed to spend years, if not a decade, understanding the dynamics of those super crazy clock speeds on the desktop. And so only now, just now, we're getting Xeon 64 gigahertz regular.
Right.
Crazy expensive.
Oh, I know, and I remember that was like back when E8500. That was something that you almost had to push to the extremes, either in liquid or on nitrous.
Yeah.
And now it's the norm. They have the 8086 processors now that push 5 gigahertz out of the box because they've been binned appropriately. And this is a discussion we had in a previous live stream, to where we're quickly approaching that limit to silicon, to where it's in order for us to push further, we have to consider a different material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I hope to be alive when that happens.
Well,
truthfully.
I think that plus chiplets is probably where we will go. Like, there'll probably be some kind of standardized interconnect, and it's like, here's your silicon bits over here, here's your optosilicon bits over here, here's the carbon nanotube coprocessor, and then I don't know.
there's definitely indicators in place that indicate what you're saying about 7 nanometer only being super high end for a while. Because if you look back, AMD has actually made an agreement with Global Foundries that they will continue to purchase chips all the way through 2024. Their current amendment, which specifies exact numbers, runs through 2020. But again, this overall agreement that they will continue to be a customer runs through 2024. So we're still going to, this is an indication to me that we're still going to be seeing 12 and 14 nanometer parts coming out of AMD.
Yeah.
Well, not just that. A lot of people misunderstand these agreements. So AMD has agreed to purchase that capacity, but that doesn't mean that AMD can't sell it to somebody else as well. It's a little bit of a futures market. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily. And if it's a futures market and the production cost of, like, if there's so little 12 and 14 nanometer production available in 2020, and AMD can sell that production cost to somebody else, then both AMD and Global Foundries will make out better financially as a result of that transaction, even though, you know, they may not have this, that, or the other. But think about, I mean, look at AMD's actual production cost right now for something like the Ryzen 7 2700X. You figure the yield rate is only going to go up once they figure out the things that make the yield rate lower than it is right now with
Naturally.
just, really incremental process improvements. And so the R&D is a sunk cost. And so, you know, maybe not laptops because of the power consideration, but, you know, AMD would still be making a profit once their R&D is paid off at $25, $30 a chip. So selling those CPUs for $100 and less by 2024, that tracks with Moore's Law and the distribution of, you know, computing processors and all this kind of stuff. So if they wanted to just keep that as a low-end CPU, maybe with minor tweaks, they could just keep selling the same silicon from now until 2024, and as long as the price tracks, people will still buy it, and AMD still makes money.
Yeah, it definitely falls in line with, you know, previous strategies with the 8350 kind of just hanging in there. But the difference now,
kind of just hanging in there.
The difference now is they won't just have low end products; they'll also have the higher tier stuff to fill in what they were missing before.
Right.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of stuff in the enterprise that flew under the radar that was really, truly brilliant stuff. Like, they had so this was like 10 years ago, but, you know, virtual desktop infrastructure. AMD did this thing with HP that was totally out of the box. They had, like, with virtual desktop infrastructure, Intel was trying to cram like these high core count Xeons and a ton of RAM in a box and say that, you know, this one 4U box would be great for 250 virtual desktop users. So like in the enterprise, you have like a dumb terminal, and your office and your clerical workers just run a virtual machine for data entry and stuff like that. And it's cheap and security is easy and that kind of thing. That's the kind of computers we're talking about.
Right.
What AMD got with HP, and they said, why don't we just cram like 50 or 100 real cheap APUs in a box? And so it's not like a 50 or 100 processor box. It's literally like it's a regular server with like 50 or 100 add-in cards that's an APU that one or two users run on. And so nobody's going to have a better experience than you would get out of an APU.
Right.
But that was actually kind of brilliant because it was less overhead to do it that way than to try to, you know, divvy up one computer's resources to 50 different people.
Sure. And it's that kind of ingenuity that I hope AMD will get back to more and more.
Yeah.
I always grew up using AMD hardware as a child, and I think all of us who have used AMD hardware at some point and got to enjoy a lot of their products that gave them the name that they have is kind of really hoping that they start to take their name back in some way, shape, or form. And they're starting to do that with their high core count CPUs for sure, and they're taking workstation space like crazy from Intel, and it seems like Intel's doing a lot to kind of quickly get back on their feet and compete. So I just want to sit back and see where this takes them.
I mean, that's definitely the name of the game here, is making a name for yourself in this industry. Is you know, as long as your product is somewhat competitive, having a name for yourself seems to be more important. I mean, we see that with NVIDIA all the time, especially with their lower end cards that, you know, are getting outperformed by AMD's low end offerings. They still sell more because they've made that name for themselves.
Right.
I don't 100% keep up with things happening in the console world.
Yeah.
But the 2024 production timetable for consoles, the new consoles from both Microsoft and Sony have pretty much been confirmed to be on the, you know, like a 12 to 14 nanometer, like Ryzen, current gen Ryzen type process, right? Or no?
Yeah. I mean, AMD took the APU market in that regard for consoles, and because of how simple it is to integrate into the board designs and the low cost and overhead in doing so, that's going to be really difficult for Intel to kind of eke their way into any kind of agreement with Microsoft or Sony, I think.
That'll be really good for that production agreement as well, because as far as like 7 nanometer goes, you know, I think that they'll be in a hard spot to get as much 7 nanometer capacity as they really need.
Right.
So the high-end customers will get it first. So yeah, that all tracks. I mean, that makes sense. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think Global Foundries could circle back and end up licensing stuff from other companies as well. I mean, that's a possibility in the future. But you know, there's another interesting thing that's related to this.
What's that?
And I don't know if you guys saw but Intel is actually spooling up. They seem to be spooling up more 14 and 22 nanometer capacity for their chipsets. So you know, like the H310 chipset, there seem to be 3 variants on 3 different processes of the H310 process that have been caught in the wild out there by OEMs, which I thought was really fascinating. And it looks like one of the H310 chipsets is actually on a 14 nanometer process, which suggests that Intel is not really having capacity problems with 14 nanometer, or they've spooled up even more 14 nanometer, and that 10 nanometer is not really that close.
Sure.
So they don't want to say, hey, we just brought a new fabrication plant online, 14 nanometer.
And that makes sense. It's there, and that's kind of the name of the game for a lot of these major manufacturers. We're never going to get complete disclosure as to why they do the things that they do. So, like you said, Wendell, it could be a matter of, well, we just put all this investment into 14 nanometers, so we're going to wait until we do anything with 10. We're still refining it, guys. It'll be next year. And by that, I mean I'm going to check quarterly reports, and if everything irons out, hey, 10 nanometers for everybody.
Well, it's pretty telling that the 10 nanometer laptop you can get in China doesn't have an iGPU, which is where most of the transistors are.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. So Raruto M says Epic 7 nanometer is where they will start making good money. I mean, you're not wrong. Epic processors were impressive to begin with. So if
they're already starting to pick up with Epic for sure.
Well, dude, look at how long Opteron processors were around for. Like, I was selling Opteron solutions for the longest time, and it was mainly people that just wanted cores. That's all they cared about were cores.
Yep.
So it's their wheelhouse. Without a doubt.
it is a lot of fun though to sort of I would say that AMD could squeeze out, like, if something went wrong, plan B for AMD could be to squeeze out Threadripper style clocks on Epic CPUs, but the problem is still going to be power utilization.
Yeah.
So I don't think the enterprise really wants a 400 watt 4 gigahertz 32 core CPU.
No,
I don't think that's something the enterprise
right.
yeah. I don't think the enterprise really wants that. But you think about, like, I'm doing testing on a 2990. I've only had a 2990 for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
And under regular operation, those cores are only using, not counting Infinity Fabric and all the others, because Infinity Fabric, honestly, AMD probably should put a little bit more work in Infinity Fabric and the power that it uses.
Mm-hmm.
If AnandTech is right about how much power that actually uses. Because, I mean, good Lord, that's where a lot of heat's coming from.
Right.
But if you look at how much power the core actually uses running at like 3 gigahertz, I mean, it's like 5 watts per core. That's insane.
It is. It kind of feels like they took a note from their APU designs there. Like, this is technology that's working for us. How can we spin this to our advantage in future products? Now they just, like you said, they need to get that power draw down. Because, I mean, to me, it was such a shock when you hear and see the reports of these Threadripper processors when they first came out, and then their TDP ratings. And then when you actually put it into practice and use it, and you're like, okay, so we're going to need to only offer triple radiators, liquid coolers with this product. Air coolers are out of the question unless you need to heat a room as well, and you want your system to catch fire. Yeah.
I've really struggled. I've been trying to build a quiet system with the 2990, and I think this is going to be one of the most amazing videos that we've done in a really long time, because it is shockingly hard to produce a system that is quiet, but that can also deal with that 2990 running full tilt.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. And you'll always get people that want, they want their cake and they want to eat it too.
Yeah.
And even like we've built custom liquid cooling loops for Threadripper systems, and I mean, we get close to quiet, but it's not quite there.
Right.
And you have to sacrifice, obviously, cooling performance in the process. So it depends on what your focus is and what you care most about.
Yeah, and with Precision Boost Overdrive, I found in just experimenting, you can also go the other way.
Okay.
So if I limit the 250 watt 2990 to 180 watts, it runs cooler. It runs much cooler, but the top all-core turbo is like 2.6 or 2.8 gigahertz versus like 3.4. Even though they say it's 3 gigahertz, it seems to be like 3.4 on most workloads that I've tested for all 32 cores. But that's going to vary for workload. That's also going to vary with the thermals. If the CPU is getting warm, it's going to back off to 3.
Right.
But at 180 watts, it's like 2.8 gigahertz all core, but I still get the 4.2 gigahertz precision boost overdrive on most cores for lightly loaded things. So that's exciting. I mean, that's sort of an exciting time where you can just dial in and say, okay, I've got maybe 200 watts of cooling capacity in my case. I'm just going to set it for like 150 watts. And you don't really lose that much performance.
That's pretty impressive.
We have a few AMD related questions, so let's go through a couple. First one. Sorry, I can't read Russian, but do you think
Can you give your best stab at it?
those aren't even English letters, Joe.
Just try it. Just give it a shot, man. It won't bite. Sorry, man. Totally butchered. No offense, really. I wanted to try it.
That was terrible, Joe.
It was awful.
So, anyways, his question was, do you think the Ryzen laptops will catch on, or will there be a new wave of Intel rebates to suppress them? I don't think there's anything that can really stop the Ryzen laptops, because if you've actually looked at the breakdown of the kind of power they use for the different workloads, I mean, they're nothing short of incredible, especially compared to previous AMD offerings. Like, they're here, and, it's the future.
AMD, when you're here, you're here.
The power curve, it's scary. Okay, so like the 8086K you mentioned earlier, if you look at the power curve of the 8086K and it's 6 cores versus the 2700X and it's 8 cores, the curves are almost identical. It's shifted though. So like on the 2700X, when you go from 4 to 4.2 gigahertz, you're needing almost double the power. So imagine the graph where it's just it's taking off like crazy. With even a delidded 8086K from 4.8 to like 5.3 gigahertz is like almost the doubling, and you really have to delid it for the 5.3 gigahertz area. I think 5.2 is okay. 5.2 is more manageable on most CPUs on the 8086, and the 8700 can do 5.0, 5.1 if you can manage the heat. But the problem is basically the same in a laptop. So in a laptop, you don't have that ridiculous cooling, but the curve is still pretty much the same. You're just working at a much lower voltages, but you're still trying to achieve that 4-ish gigahertz overclock. And so like the new 6 cores, like the new 4 and 6 cores, the true 4 cores that replace the old hyper-threaded dual cores, and the new 6 cores that replace the old 4 cores in the higher end laptops, those are great. But if you actually run the power profile to really unleash those CPUs, you usually have a heat and cooling problem and also a battery life problem.
Right.
So,
it's tough.
To see where the efficiency is between, especially if you take into account like Ryzen plus Vega. So I don't know if Ryzen plus Vega per unit compute for the amount of battery life expended, I don't know what that equation looks like, but I think it might be tilted very, very slightly in favor of AMD. In practice, in the real world, it's actually tilted in favor of Intel because the iGPU is weaker on the Intel parts that have an iGPU.
Right.
But for the AMD parts that have built-in Vega, you can underclock it and undervolt it. And I think if you do that so that the power curve of those is equal, the combined computational power between the CPU and Vega is probably a little bit better in that equation. So maybe not this generation, maybe the next generation will be, especially on 7 nanometer, that'll be the thing that really will be head and shoulders above Intel. Because I think where we're at this point is basically at parity and maybe a little behind Intel.
Right.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like you need that first generation that actually does something that you're like, oh hey, that's pretty good, to catch attention, and then your next generation is what really takes off. But still, I mean, the current offerings are nothing to scoff at.
Not at all. No, the amount of power saving features that the AMD APUs are starting to have more and more is huge.
Yeah.
You got products like the Switch, for example, that when you have that kind of technology, you make those kind of things possible.
Here's the thing that could, like, I don't know. I'm going to say this, and I don't actually think this for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to say it because it's maybe controversial and clickbait. I don't know. If you were Intel, if you were an Intel investor, now would be the time you should push the board of directors to open up the fabrication to third-party bidders. And the reason for that is because GlobalFoundries is saying we can make so much money at 12 and 14 nanometers that it's crazy. It's a license to print money, blah, blah, blah. So Intel should more easily and directly work with customers. And maybe Intel should spin off its own, like Alphabet spun, there's Alphabet and Google and whatever.
Right.
Maybe Intel should do the same thing with its foundry to let external customers buy time on their process, because it's no longer, the trade secrets argument no longer really makes sense, because it's not as leading as it was. Even if you're like super Intel fanboy and it's like, no, their 14 nanometer process is the best 14 nanometer process in the world, then that's actually an argument in favor of, like, if you're an investor, it would be in your investor's best interests to open that up while it is still an industry leading 14 nanometer process, knowing that 14 nanometer will be end of life as soon as 7 nanometer becomes easier through whatever breakthroughs. So we can sell production time for this kind of stuff to third parties. So there's a lot of logistical reasons why that probably won't work. But as an Intel investor, I think that investors, if smelling problems with this 10 nanometer process, the investors could start insisting on that, and that might make things difficult for how Intel has run things in the past. But that might actually be better for Intel in the future.
Probably. I would imagine so.
All right.
That kind of thing they're not comfortable with, though, apparently.
Not at all. I can't really speak on that in an official capacity, but that's the general consensus that I get. So.
But it is surprising, though, that there's one little hint of that, and that's the Intel plus Vega. So, like the KB Lake G laptops, that's a really, really super interesting product.
It is. It's like when you had Intel boards back in the day, when you had to have SLI and Crossfire compatibility, you would get Intel boards that would have Crossfire compatibility. And I can't, to be honest, I can't remember if that was right when AMD bought Radeon or if it was on the brink, or on the edge, or there were talks.
That's Intel experimenting with chiplets as well, which is like, whoa.
I know, it was really weird to see it, like, oh, maybe they understand the demand and they just want people to buy their boards. And
well, the other chiplet experiment before them that didn't get really any traction was the one that had 128 megs of ED RAM on the CPU, and that was amazing for a lot of reasons. Right. So maybe we'll start seeing CPUs with HBM and RAM becomes like a secondary RAM.
That would be nuts. That opens the door to a whole level of different possibilities that I don't even know if my mind can be prepared for it right now. It's going to
figure out Meltdown Inspector, because a whole other layer of cache with things like Meltdown Inspector is going to be really bad.
It's like Spectre squared, and it's like, not only does it take a hold of your PC, but also turns it into a watermelon. And you're just like, ah! God, no!
Oh my gosh. So our next topic that we have is...
Speaking of AMD.
Yeah. More AMD. Jim Anderson has left AMD. He was the senior vice president of computing and graphics. Well...
But Ryzen!
Here's
Threadripper!
Here's why, Joe. So it looks like he was gunning for a CEO position.
What makes you say that, Zach?
That's just what a lot of the people that worked with him were saying. So... It's more so hearsay. He didn't say it factually, but where he moved to would also indicate that. Because
where'd he move?
So he, let's see.
Lattice Semiconductor.
Yes.
And what is his position there?
He's going to be CEO.
So he got what he wanted.
When we talked about this story, too, literally like hours later, Zach throws me a link to it, and he's like, hey, guess what?
Yeah, when we first found the news, we didn't know where he moved to, and then I actually found it at the last minute. It's like, oh, he went to Lattice. So if you're not familiar with them, they specialize in hardware for Internet of Things type stuff. You know, refrigerators, toasters.
What?
Everything's Internet of Things now, Joe.
He's gonna optimize the energy usage of a fridge, a smart fridge to be exact. And I would be quite surprised to find out that it is powered by a Ryzen APU.
they're putting, you know, they're licensing that Zen intellectual property. I mean, the Chinese processors.
He didn't really leave. He's just over there so to make sure that they get AMD stuff.
This is all a coup. Is all it is. Like, we're gonna put this publicly. We're gonna say you're unhappy and that you're gonna creative differences or whatever, and you're gonna go over to Lattice and fridges, toasters, blenders, smart chairs. We're doing it.
I would like to know what I would you know, what the circumstances were of his departure and all this kind of thing. Right. It looks like AMD is gearing up to have 2 or 3 people replace him.
Right.
Which I think says a lot about, you know, what he was probably doing really super Herculean.
Yeah, he definitely carried some weight.
Yeah.
Putting in like 100-hour weeks and not sleeping.
Like, this is my hobby and my job. I'll just live here.
I don't need sleep. Work is my sleep.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that for a while, but it becomes hard to do after a few years. So maybe Lattice, he has some ideas for, you know, you get an itch after a while that you can't scratch when you're working on stuff, and it's like, okay, I'm just going to put all this other stuff on hold, and I'm going to explore this other thing for a while, and I might come back and I might do this other thing. But I would be curious to know if he would be welcome back at AMD if he changes his mind, because that would tell me a lot about the nature of his departure.
Right. Yeah, I would want to know that too. It's really tough to try and speculate too when you got somebody that's in his position. You would think it could go one of both ways. Either the creative differences were enough to allow them to both go in their own separate ways, or he simply wanted things to happen that AMD wasn't willing to entertain based on their roadmap, and he was like, fine, bye. See you later.
Yeah.
One of the two.
Now, the story of, like, did you guys see the press thing for Threadripper? And Threadripper almost wasn't. Like, they weren't sure that they even wanted to do that, and it was basically a hobby project for a bunch of people inside the company. And then they got it far enough along that it was like, we should do this. This will be a Halo product for AMD, and it really has been. Like, not everybody needs a Threadripper CPU, but for the people that do, holy crap, it's not a bad CPU. It's actually pretty interesting in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's one of those products that creates a name. I mean, it's like we talked about earlier. It's like you need those products that create your name, and then that sells your other products.
What's exciting to me is, especially being in a sales position, I went from seeing individuals who were representatives of companies or universities or government entities purchasing high-end dual Xeon workstations at high dollar amounts, to then seeing your average either mom and pop shops or even just single entrepreneur-based individuals or people that own their own business buying Threadripper systems at a price that's actually affordable to do very similar things that were being done the year prior with machines that were super expensive. That was exciting to me to have those conversations with those people, because you could hear it in their voice tone that they were pumped to be able to have their hands on something that was going to make not only their job a lot easier, but you know, it doesn't make their wallet want to cry. You know,
it makes your wallet want to cry a little bit, but not as bad as it used to be. So it's also really telling that. I mean, think about when Sandy Bridge was released like 7 years ago, and that was like 4 cores, and it was amazing. And we've had 4 cores on the desktop until all of a sudden it's like AMD's like, here's 8 cores, and then
AMD's like, I'm bored, let's do more.
I'm pretty sure we're gonna have 8 cores on the desktop next, like in a while, probably. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
No, but I mean that's what we are speculating,
right?
So
a specific K series,
but it's also cannibalizing things. So, like, well, wait a minute. You're telling me that not a year ago we have the 7800X 8 core, which is like a $500 or $600 processor,
right?
And that processor has a lot of problems, in my opinion. Like, positioning it the way that Intel did, I would say that the minimum CPU that you should be considering probably was the $1,000 7900X for a couple of different reasons, which is crazy. Like that CPU is not a $1,000 CPU to begin with, but if you're going to pay the admission time, it's a 10 core, whatever. You can get it up to like 4.5, 4.6 gigahertz without delidding. Although you get some heat, you're going to have to manage in that scenario, and some power delivery, and then just not even. I'm thinking of like the Sandy Bridge timescale here versus like the last year. And so like we've got everything that happened from now all the way back to Sandy Bridge happening from now, like back a year, 18 months ago. So we're getting something that's going to be better than a 7800 or 7820 D8 core. We're going to get something that's better than the X299 on a dual channel platform in a time like they're not even not manufacturing, like they're still manufacturing the X299 8-core.
Right.
So they're simultaneously manufacturing two products that compete with one another, and Intel's usually like super careful.
Yeah,
I know.
To do that.
AMD has definitely made them stumble a bit with their strategy. It's like you said, they used to be very adamant about their product division, and now their products are just kind of like meshed together, sort of, and it's really confusing. But it's still good for the consumer.
And like the Xeon WS, like the Xeon workstation CPU versus the 7980 XE, there's no difference.
No.
There's $1,000 difference, but there's no difference.
No.
ECC support and chipset support. That's literally all you get.
I know.
Yeah.
That's it.
I've literally
There's
seen
nothing
people
else.
forced into that price point all because they desire or require ECC. Because
Yeah.
I don't know when Intel decided to stop dropping ECC support on desktop processors, but they did it quietly. I don't remember them ever making a big fuss about it until one day you check QVL and you just go, oh.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
definitely had that happen here in house. It's like, this worked before. Why isn't this? Oh, they don't support it now. That's cool.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, to be fair, though, and I have to be blunt, there's been plenty of times that we've had Intel processors that have supported ECC, exact same configurations, and just randomly run into problems we didn't have before.
Yeah.
For one reason or another. So, I mean, maybe it was an inconsistency they were having with it, and that's why they scraped it, or maybe it was a choice to force you into a price bracket to, I don't know, make more money.
Well, it's funny because a lot of those same desktop processors, like the i3 version, does actually do ECC because they needed something at the low end.
Yeah.
There wasn't Pentium or Atom because they screwed the pooch on like the Cherry Trail Atom stuff because those CPUs were nice. They were really amazing.
They were.
And Intel they fumbled real bad.
Oh. Poor Intel.
Yeah, they'll just cry themselves to sleep on their billions upon billions of dollars.
Yeah, it's just so sad. It's not
Wipe the tears away with money.
Could have been trillions, but I guess it's just billions. Not as comfortable, but I suppose they'll do. You know, while I sleep on my $20 pillow.
It would be fun to see if things inside Intel, they're like, oh, we gotta innovate, guys. Come on, guys, what's going on? Are you gonna do the innovation thing? It's like, what are we innovating today? And it's, you know, you have that manager, and it's like, no, it's not. That's not how that works. You got to have people inside the company that are like, we need to make this crazy Threadripper thing, and most of those things won't pan out, but sometimes they do.
Maybe in 3 years we'll get a Sandy Bridge Anniversary Edition.
That would be funny.
Yep. Sandy Sidewalk. So, what do we got next? We have...
This is one of your topics you found.
So, we had a discussion prior to this live stream, Wendell, to where you had a wall of monitors, right, that you were sitting in front of, and Zach was talking about how you kind of had to poke your head through to prevent, you know.
There's a wall of monitors behind me, even.
Oh, okay, even better. So,
Yeah.
Acer is coming out with a product that likely could have helped you with that a little bit. Wait, that, huh?
That's not it.
There it is. We have here what looks to be the exact same, similar setup to JP from Grandma's Boy. So if you hate your face, you can cover it with monitors. The great yeah, well, you hear that, Acer? You need to come out with an adapter or a different ARM extension
Yeah,
to make
go
this
big or
possible.
go home.
Right. What
One
are
of
you
those not
thinking, Acer?
satisfied.
Such a trivial product.
Yeah.
Think outside of the box.
Our resident multi-monitor expert is not pleased.
This is really, like, I have thought about getting something like this, and it is super tempting.
I know, right? Only the problem is with being married and having kids to feed, this would likely be dropped on my head in my sleep. So this is the bachelor in me going, oh man, I don't need a couch. That's my couch. Do anything from that. And it's got haptic feedback, which is awesome. So we have people that do like racing sims and stuff. This could just kind of be a step, maybe in an affordable manner, to kind of be in a kind of a racer sim that you see a lot of people building custom. So that was something that I thought was pretty neat. It is releasing, I believe, by the end of this year is what they're claiming, which is kind of strange to me. It feels like this was just recently announced, so let's go to market fairly quick. Right?
Do we know a price?
Yeah, that's my question.
No!
I hadn't seen a price anywhere myself.
No price information, and I have here noted gulp.
It's probably about 10 grand, I'd say.
It's the same situation with me, Wendell, in the big format gaming displays. They still haven't released pricing information, and we all know why. You know why there's no pricing
They want to get you hooked on it before you realize the price, and then that way you try and talk yourself into it.
Right. No, I know. And to be fair, when I had seen some of the HDR 4K G-Sync monitors at CES earlier this year, nobody confirmed pricing for those, but they hinted at a certain price point. So I was like, okay, I think I can take that hit to my wallet, and that's not at all what it ended up to be. So hopefully whatever price point they do decide to set for this, it's set in stone unless they run into manufacturing issues with cheap parts, and then it just keeps increasing. I don't know.
Yeah, this is one of those like, hey, look at us type of products. I don't think they're going to sell very many.
I mean, it doesn't look like it takes up that much space though, which is pretty interesting.
I mean, it is cool, for sure.
But
I think, did they have this at Computex? Because I might have seen it at Computex.
I don't
think
remember
Cooler
seeing
Master
it.
might have had one as well.
oh man, Cooler Master. Let me tell you, did you get a chance to see Cooler Master at their booth in CES? Well, they're
At Computex, I did.
yeah, okay. Did they have the same similar setup where it's kind of staged, kind of like almost like in a mantelpiece where like a fireplace would be, but it was set up like a desk, and they had all those LED lights doing dances.
Yeah.
Did you see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
The way it looked in person to me, I was like, dude, if Cooler Master pulls this off, and they're showing the software and the ingenuity behind it, if they pull this off, this is a huge win, because this is different. Because you have something, kind of a network of LEDs and RGBs that can connect with not just fans and things within it, but externally. This could be huge. And
Yeah, the MSI did that, and they had their booth set up in a similar way, not as like over the top as that, but with their Mystic Light thing, it's got hooks into games and stuff, and so like Dota 2, when you're getting hurt in Dota 2, it can change your LEDs and all kinds of stuff.
yeah, it was that's kind of what they were presented, or that they were presenting at CES, but it was very disheartening to see when I actually got my hands on Cooler Master's RGB software. I don't know how to put it politely, but it's a chaotic mess. It's awful.
The stuff from MSI, if you haven't taken a look at it, you probably should, because it seems like it's much further along. Not every game has support, but they've added support for like CSGO and Dota and some other, like the leagues that MSI supports like on a corporate level. Most of those companies have added support for that, and you can do a lot of really crazy stuff with the lighting, not just the case lighting, but actually room lighting, which is sort of nuts.
Well, see, that's anybody who can kind of bring that level of ingenuity into like the LED lighting scene, I think.
You got RGB all the things.
You can RGB your fridge.
It's an arms race that never ends. RGB all the things.
Has anybody built a bridge to go from that software to what is it, the DMX, the stuff that DJs use for like parties and light control? Like, I need the RGB controller to just be a DMX controller and done.
I mean, that'd be pretty sweet. There's probably people out there that have done it on a smaller scale, not for like mass release, but that would still be a great concept, and I would probably end up buying it even though I'd never use it. Just saying. So, all right. So this brings to the next topic, Zach, which is something that you were emotionally invested in.
So, Freesync is now working with NVIDIA cards, but there's a catch. You do have to have either an AMD APU in your system or an AMD GPU. So essentially how it works is you set the output through your APU or your AMD card, and you have the rendering offloaded to the NVIDIA card. So you could have like a stupid powerful NVIDIA card and just some AMD potato. Pair the two together and your Freesync monitor works.
AMD potato? Sounds nutritious. What does it clock to?
1. But no, this is definitely very interesting, and this is we've been seeing people poking at the FreeSync G-Sync thing for a while now, because I don't know if you remember back to when G-Sync first was a thing, but there was actually a driver hack where you tricked the drivers to thinking it was a laptop, and then all of a sudden the FreeSync worked because there's no module in the laptops.
Yeah, and NVIDIA was like, oh, that's cute, new release.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody remembers that, but that was the thing, and it worked fine, and there was nothing wrong with it. It worked totally fine over DisplayPort, because DisplayPort has that built in, but not anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, for a while, it's somewhat unrelated topic, but NVIDIA had a problem with their drivers in the control panel, to where if you're using something like a smart TV, that the smart TV would lock your ability to perform scaling from the GPU, which introduces additional input lag because you're relying on the TV's processing power to actually generate the display as it relates to your movement. I was using an LG TV at the time when this was a problem, and the only way I could fix it was I had to introduce an EDID hack to force my PC into thinking it was an Acer monitor. And then it worked. Yeah.
You know, that's another thing that's built into the Quadro drivers that's not in the GeForce drivers, and that makes me kind of sad.
Yeah. Well, you know why they're doing it, though. I mean, come on.
Why?
When you release an end-user license agreement that just slips in there that, by the way, if you use this for a use not intended for gaming, you have no warranty and we won't support you.
Super sneaky.
We know why. The sneaky snake.
Yeah. We were so we've got this thing called Looking Glass on Linux, which lets you do virtual machines. Like, you can run a Windows virtual machine, but it'll copy the Windows graphics card to the host through shared memory. And that was another way that you could do FreeSync with an NVIDIA graphics card. And we got that working like forever ago, but FreeSync has been broken in the kernel. Like the binary driver from AMD for Ubuntu 16.04, it would work with that. But FreeSync has kind of been broken. There's some patches that kind of re-enable it,
right?
But it's not the best experience in the world. But the magic behind the scenes, really, the whole ATI or the whole NVIDIA AMD card thing got a lot cleaner with changes to the graphics subsystem in Windows as of version 18.03. And so, like, the mechanism for how it's doing that is called DXGI. It's the DirectX graphics interface.
Right.
And it used to be also that if you set up display mirroring, like if you had an AMD card and an NVIDIA card and you booted off of the AMD card, whether that was an APU or an add-in card, you could just go in Windows and set up display mirroring, and it would do it would show you like 1, 2, and as long as that AMD card was your primary card, you could still load the Radeon utilities, and FreeSync worked fine in that case as well. And NVIDIA patched that out so that it would not work in that case somehow. I don't know how. But with 18.03, that is still kind of broken, but because it's got the high-power, low-power GPU, you can use the Windows 18.03 graphics utility and say that integrated Vega is the low-power GPU, and your NVIDIA card is a high-power GPU, and then all of a sudden everything works again. And any game, for an add-in GPU, it doesn't work like that. But for an add-in GPU, if your game supports telling it what GPU to use for rendering, that will also work completely fine. And that's always worked fine since the beginning of time. But if you run a game in windowed mode, the improvements to Windows 18.03 have been to try to improve windowed gaming and to try to make windowed gaming not gimped performance versus full screen gaming.
Right.
And so the windowed gaming can also work if you can get FreeSync to run in windowed mode, which should work, I think, with 18.03. So full screen windowed, you can just literally drag the window over to the FreeSync monitor, and then you've got free.
Nice.
Yeah, it's funny to watch this game of cat and mouse with FreeSync. Works with NVIDIA. FreeSync doesn't work with NVIDIA because they patched it out. It's amusing to watch. And you mentioned that you've been working on this quite a bit yourself, Wendell. If you wanted to tell us more about that.
Oh yeah, that's just Looking Glass and the stuff. It makes it easier you can basically, the way that you're doing it in a virtual machine.
Right.
So you can run Windows in a virtual machine without having monitors hooked up to the graphics card that's passed through to your virtual machine.
Ooh.
And just, and then you get in a window, but it's the same mechanism. It's using the DirectX interface to do that. Except instead of copying it to another monitor, it's copying it to another operating system. But it's the same mechanism.
That's
and some
so
people
sweet.
are like freaking out, like, oh my gosh, the latency of this will be so much higher, and blah, blah, blah. It's probably going to add like 1 or 2 milliseconds, worst case scenario.
That's dust in the wind.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Probably less than that. So
yeah, that's pretty cool.
I'm not complaining. Just the fact that I wish, and I understand the differences as to why companies have their own kind of anti-input lag and high refresh rate technologies in place with display manufacturers, but I just wish there would just be one win for the industry overall to where manufacturers can decide this is just going to be a universal standard. Like, could you imagine, and I know there was a whole legal kerfuffle over it, but could you imagine if PCI Express technology was like company proprietary? How much of a mess that would be?
Again, I think for the very first thing that we were discussing, NVIDIA is in a position here where they don't have to be petty about this. They can say, you know what? We don't care. We think G-Sync's a better experience, and we know it's a better experience. But if you want to use FreeSync, we don't care. We got a better product. We don't care. I mean, that's the attitude that they should have. Whether or not that's true is another thing, but that's the
Right.
attitude they should have.
No, and I agree with you, Wendell, wholeheartedly. It's not like they went to the extent of taking something like tessellation and timesing it by 64 in their drivers with current GPU technology to cripple manufacturers.
That's a thing that's happened before. Oops, was that wrong? Should we not have done that?
All right. Now I can only hope that ray tracing isn't going to be a repeat of that in some way, shape, or form. I'm hoping.
I'm going to be poking at that as soon as these ray tracing games come out to see if that is or is not the case.
You got to be careful about how hard you poke that situation, because you might get a knock on your door.
So we heard you were looking into some things that you shouldn't be looking into.
Right. Just all I'm saying
in the van.
is stop what you're barking for before you get bit. Okay? That's all I'm going to say. Just be careful, Zach. I care for you.
Are you in on this?
Their spies are everywhere.
They're called NVIDIA men. Okay, so we'll move on to the next section of the live stream, which is just some quick AVA news. We have an Intel VR bundle that's still going on until the end of this year. That includes a suite of VR titles as well as non-VR titles that Intel was just ever so kind to include in the bundle. We also still have the Intel Optane bundle that's going on until the end of September, and that includes $610 worth of softwares for a Core i7 processor purchase-based device. So Core i7, free software. Sweet stuff. And then, of course, the AMD bundle, which still includes Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Strange Brigade, and Star Control Origins. All free. And that's going until the end of this year. So
I also wanted to address a question we had earlier.
you're not allowed, no.
So a user asked what a majority of our business is, whether it's gaming or enterprise, and we actually have a pretty equal
PCs.
split. Yeah.
We sell PCs.
I mean, it's all over the place.
I would say more and more it feels like that we're kind of split down the middle between business and gaming. We still service a lot of gaming requests, but as a custom builder, we started to segue into solution selling in a manner to where we build solutions around our clients. So we were building one-offs on PCs for the longest time, and now we're building one-offs on solutions tailored to specific customers and their uses. And I wish I could go in more detail, but I am legally not able to. So tough.
It's so cool, and I wish I could talk about it with a lot of people.
I know. Maybe there's some sort of a loophole, and if you say it in a different language,
Pig Latin.
a third world language. It's got to be a third world language, like old medieval British.
Hi.
I
If you say it like this, it's fine.
I have my simulator for you to look at.
Oh, that's quite amazing.
Yes, me lord.
But yeah, we do it all. We do large-scale solutions, and the units of hundreds, and we also do individual gaming customers. We do pretty much everything.
Crazy stuff. Now, Wendell, here's a question to you from a man by the name of Cybercat, or a woman by the name of Cybercat. Wendell, when was the last time we had a CPU or like this? Late 90s?
Honestly, it was probably it was after the 90s. It's probably the Athlon 64. So like the Athlon 64 was like super insanely the Athlon 64 was a better product, and is why AMD won $1 billion for can't remember what. There was an EU thing. Intel got in trouble for doing things that are, let's say, anti-competitive, and they were fined $1 billion. They haven't paid that.
That's right.
But that's in the EU. That was over 10 years ago. Still going through stuff. So that's not
right.
really been that long ago.
They referred to it as quote unquote buying the business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
There were like marketing rebates and stuff. I don't know. It's a different. The world now is different than the world was 10 years ago. But it's going to be interesting to see if any of the current goings on the NVIDIA side of thing come out, because again, there's enough room in the market for two. It doesn't have to be 99%, 1%. And NVIDIA is definitely the 800-pound gorilla here, as is Intel.
800-pound gorilla. My God, a green gorilla at that. That's a scary sight. I don't know if I want to envision that, but it's already happening. Yeah, I just kind of wish NVIDIA would be humbled in one way or another. I honestly don't care how it happens, but I feel like that NVIDIA, if they were able to approach things in a much more humbling manner, I think we'd get better products, but I also think the industry would be grateful from several outcomes that would create. You know, just like you said, if they just said, you know what, you want to use FreeSync, whatever, we don't care. There's tons of companies that take that approach, and it actually works out well for them. Only time
I don't think there's any competitive reason that hurts them. It's like, oh, we support FreeSync now. Okay, sounds good. It's like, you know what? We're so confident in our G-Sync solution. We're so confident in our graphics card solution. You go right ahead. Right. If you want to cheap out and do FreeSync and experience the awful, pleb levels of frame synchronization, you go right ahead. I don't really believe that. I don't think that, but that's the attitude that they should have, given their market cap and how much money they have. Yeah.
Do you want to be on the side of rags or riches?
I'd like to be on the side of riches.
Well, I mean, if you look at the Asus, the $2,000 Asus monitor, which I'm really super tempted to buy. Like, I might, because it's like I'm looking at it, the way that looking at this is like, I usually get about 5 years out of my monitors. Yeah. And my other setup that I use, not this setup, but my other setup that I use, is a 40-inch monitor with 2 Dell 2405s on top of it. Those monitors are from like 2005, 2006.
But they're still working.
They were crazy expensive. Like, there was a situation where it was like I splurged and I got some of the 2405s, and they actually I sort of let other people use them and friends use them and stuff, and they sort of made their way back to me, and it was like, oh wow, these monitors are actually not completely horrible. So for displaying code and stuff, it's basically fine. I mean, a $99 monitor better than those monitors at this point,
right?
But it's, they're 1920 by 1200, so it's the 16 by 10 aspect ratio. And so I'm looking at the purchase of the $2,000 Asus monitor counted the same way, and it's like, well, I could do that. And inside that monitor literally is a $400 FPGA, a field programmable gate array. There's no reason that an FPGA like that should be in any kind of end user consumer product. That should totally be an ASIC.
Right.
But it's the G-Sync module, and it's the special sauce that's doing all the G-Sync stuff. So there's something sauce. There. So it tells me, one, they don't expect to sell enough to bother with an ASIC, or they needed to do that to get it out the door, or the special sauce on that ASIC is so special. I mean, the special sauce on the FPGA is so special that they don't want to turn over the special sauce to a fab house to actually make it in silicon.
Right.
So any of those answers is interesting. So it's like, I probably want to own that, because that's probably going to be a piece of history, whether or not 10 years from now it's going to be antitrust or the beginning of whatever it is.
Knowing you, you'll tear it apart and figure out what makes it tick in 2 seconds.
Hey man, you said G-Sync module. You said G-Sync module, and it took me back to when they were selling the kits for you to, like, just open up your monitor and install this. It's okay.
I'm honestly surprised we haven't seen anything on Alibaba that's G-Sync to FreeSync converter.
I mean, right? Yeah, that. And I was expecting somebody to come out with like a third party, like just generic G-Sync module that you could install on anything. And while like I wouldn't expect the latencies to be perfect, it would just be, it would take a smart TV and take a 60 millisecond refresh rate down to like 10, and then people would be like, oh, nothing. And maybe it's because everybody's worried that they're either going to get a cease and desist from NVIDIA or forced to participate in a program like GPP. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. Exciting times. Well, thank you guys for having me.
Hey, no problem, man. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us about everything that is tech related this week. Hope to have you on soon. Again in the future, of course.
Thanks for joining us, Wendell. It was great.
Thank you. Yeah, it's awesome. It was awesome being here.
No,
Good luck, you guys.
Yeah, thanks. Again, everybody, I want to thank all the viewers for watching and tuning in. Feel free to subscribe to our channels on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube. And we will see you at the same time next week.
See you guys.
Bye.